What up guys, Joachim here, and in this video I want to talk about why you might be immersing in a way that is not very effective or that is not the way that you might have thought of when you heard about immersion. So usually when people talk about language immersion, they think, oh, I'm going to go watch a lot of television or I'm going to go immerse myself in something, and just through reading and listening and watching television, I'm going to pick up this language through just sheer immersion, through just sheer hearing it a whole bunch. And that probably is not the best way to go. I do think immersion is a very good thing and that it is necessary in order for you to learn the language that you're studying. I just don't think that criteria or that method that I just described is the best way to go about immersion itself. So there is a guy on YouTube that I watched a little while ago. He made a video about a year ago, a little over a year, and I think he did a great kind of self-experiment, and I'll show you the video in just a second, but he immersed himself into English for 5,000 hours. And he had some other things, but he did about 5,000 hours total of immersion. And I think he says like about 4,000 of that was just from watching television. And he brings his English up to, a relatively, good level, but it's not perfect by any means. And he talks about in the video how, his English isn't perfect. He's not even trying to claim that it is. But it's comprehensible. Like as a native English speaker, when I hear him talk, I understand what he's trying to communicate. But given the investment of 5,000 hours, just to put that in perspective, that would be 2 hours and 45 minutes every day for a year to get to 1,000 hours, and then repeat that for 5 consecutive years. And that is an incredible amount of immersion. The time investment that you put into doing that is just immense. So let's hear what he sounds like after, I don't know how long per day he's doing it. He says it was 5,000 hours, just, if we say 2 hours, 45 minutes per day, that would assume that he did that for 5 years straight. So let's hear what he sounds like.
I had conversation with native speakers is 400 hours, but it's not the conversation. It's all native speakers speak to me. The is the one way. It's not interaction. So lots of my conversation time. It's not conversation. It's just listening, and I don't understand. And most of my time spent, I spend lots of times with watching the 4,009 for it's almost 4,000 hours. The binge watching. I watched a drama, series, movie, and lots of English stuff. Yeah, 5,000 hours is a huge time. It's a very long time. It's not.
Okay, so you can hear, if you speak English, you should basically be able to follow along with what he said and not have too much trouble, but it took him 5,000 hours to get there. Now, compare that to someone like Luca Lamperiello, which is a skilled language learner, but he's typically spending about 2 years, and he's spending about 30 minutes to an hour per day learning his language with his bidirectional translation method. And his languages are quite a bit better than what we just heard from the guy on YouTube here. What was his name? Oh, it's in Korean, so I can't understand it. But this guy's pretty good though. Like I'm not putting him down at all. This just was not a very efficient method in order to learn. I think he actually talks about that in the video. So, he does a good job of addressing some of these things. Back on track though. So if we were to do immersion, what would be a good way to do that? And these are some of the ways that I do it. And, you don't have to follow these same exact things, but you could use the same general guidelines. So the first thing I do is get materials. So the two that I'm using right now is I made a video a little while back on Language Pod 101, And so what I'm doing is Greek Pod 101, and I will actually go and just read this several times, and that will be the first thing I do. And so I read Diegni Antonia Yati Tetia Mutra. So I read this so many times that I understand now what it says. I use the English translation to get it in my mind to get the story down, and I'll listen to the lesson audio, the lesson track, and then I'll actually record the dialogue track then. So I just click dialogue and I will record that.
Τι έγινε, Αντωνία? Γιατί τέτοια μούτρα?
Okay, so I'm not going to go through all that, but once I've recorded that, then I will put it into Anki, and I will, not the recording, but I'll put just the name of it, the injustice of it all in Greece. And once I've learned it all and read it a few times, I'll put it into Anki, and then every time it comes up in Anki with that title, I'll come back here to review it again, and I'll just read it down and then listen to this transcript. And I'll read it while I listen to it. So both of those things take place. So if I do that day, that's probably the only thing I put into Anki for that day and the only thing that I do. Because, there's a lot of vocabulary that I cover in that. So, one, I am reading it. Then I am putting it into Anki so that I go back and review it on a spaced repetition method. And usually there are one or two words that I don't remember throughout it, but there's a lot that I learn and do remember because of that. So there is that. And then what I will do is I use this app called Movie to Audio, and I will actually take some of the stuff and actually turn it into an audio in here. So I will make an audio recording of it. So I remove the video because I'm screen recording it. And then I will take that and transfer that over to this Mix app. And the Mix app just takes all of the stuff that I've learned. So I'm learning from two sources right now. One is Greek Pod 101, and then the other is from the Bible. So I'm an Orthodox Christian, and so we read the Bible. We read the Bible, the Fathers, and all those things. So I'll read, this is Pros Hebreos to the Hebrews, I think I'm in chapter 2 right now. So I've been reading in chapter 2. I finished chapter 1, and I do the same thing, exact same process. I'll usually only do one verse per day of this, though. So, «Γι' αυτό εμείς πρέπει να προσέχουμε περισσότερο σε όσα ακούσαμε, για να μην ξεπέσουμε ποτέ». So I'll read that over and over and over again until I know what it means. And I'll use an English translation with it too, and I'll connect the words. I'll use usually just like Google Translate as my dictionary for individual words. Sometimes the translation that they give is not 100% like the best way to word it, so I have to infer that and compare it. But I usually do that so that I can use that. That's a very easy, quick, simple tool. So then what I would do is I can copy it. I usually do it on a computer. I don't usually do it on my phone, but I use whatever, I guess. I need this to be in Greek, so I'll take it and then paste it in there, and it gives me a rough translation of this passage. Therefore, we must pay more attention to. Γι' αυτό εμείς πρέπει να προσέχουμε. I think when I looked up just προσέχουμε by itself, I did not care for more attention. Προσέχουμε περισσότερο. I think I put it as take greater care or something like that. Just pay more attention. Προσέχουμε. We are careful. So if I say προσέχουμε, I want it to have that care or careful in it, that we have more, perisoteros, more. So, that's kind of what I do when I look this stuff up and translate it, because I want to be able to really understand the words. And so then I follow the same progress. I'll I'll put verse by verse these into Anki, and I'll review those, and then I also will, once I've finished it, I'll put the entire chapter. So I'll actually just put in Anki and say Hebrews chapter 2, and then I'll go back and read the whole thing. And so if there's certain verses where there's words that I remember less well, then that will come up, and I'll be able to review those more specifically. But that's really about it. During the day, whenever I'm driving, whenever I'm doing stuff, when I'm brushing my teeth, I'll listen to this playlist of different recordings that I've made, and eventually I'll take them off because they start to get boring once I've if I haven't memorized at some point, then that's enough. You probably should just get it off so that you get more of the fresher material coming up, and you're learning from that. But that is a good way to immerse. So I'm doing my immersion with the material that I've been reading, that I've been following, that I'm reviewing in Anki, and I'm not just randomly watching shows. Of course, sometimes I will actually just do a little bit of that, but that's not really the best form of immersion. That's something to kind of try out every now and see how much you've improved. That's not what you should be doing in order to improve your actual comprehension of the language. So this is what you should be doing, is getting recordings. It doesn't have to be exactly like this, but you need to be listening to the material that you've been learning from, and you need to be listening to it a lot, every day. Review, just listening while you're doing other things, and then that's what you're doing to the materials that you've learned. But then every day you also need to be learning materials. So you're doing some amount of learning and reviewing. I'm reviewing it with Anki, and then I'm also going in a lot of times and just rereading things. Earlier today I went back and I had reviewed some of this stuff in Anki, but I wanted to just read the entire sections that I had learned in this chapter so far, which is only down to around chapter 11 or verse 11 here. So I just read down through this all together as opposed to individual verses. Instead of at the end of this, I will, once I've gotten through verse 18, I'll put Hebrews chapter 2 into Anki, and that'll remind me to go back and just read this entire thing occasionally so that I review having read it. But I need to do that some before I get to that point too, because some of the stuff I learned at the beginning, it needs to be reviewed a little bit, I think, more than what it pops up in Anki. And it needs to be reviewed in context. So I'm getting the verse in Anki, but these verses, they appear in context as a story. So I want to read it the way that it's intended to be written as well. So there's a lot of overlapping content and areas that come up in that. And I think that if you do that in any subject that you're learning from, so if you're, say, studying Spanish, you have something in Spanish that you enjoy. There's some amount of content, and you need to be reviewing and hearing that on a regular basis, and it needs to be daily, preferably, and doing that kind of thing. So those are all things that I think would help improve your immersion in that area. So you guys take it easy, and I will talk to you in a video coming eventually. Bye.